Chapter 10: The Final Unmasking. The harbor was a chaos of churning water and blinding white light. The morning star let out a final, mournful blast of its whistle, its massive propellers beginning to push the black Atlantic water into a froth. On the receding deck, Nancy spotted a flash of a dark peacoat. Arthur Sterling was standing near the railing, clutching a leather portfolio to his chest as if it were a life raft. "He's getting away!" Nancy cried, her voice nearly lost in the wind. "Not quite, dear," Miss Marple replied calmly. She pointed toward the harbor police launch, which was skipping across the swells like a flat stone. In St. Mary Mead, when the butcher's dog runs off with a string of sausages, one doesn't chase the dog, one simply closes the gate at the end of the lane. The police launch veered sharply, cutting across the freighter's bow. A megaphone boomed over the waves. "This is the NYPD. Heave to and prepare to be boarded." The freighter groaned as its engines reversed, the momentum dying just yards from the harbor's edge. Minutes later, the docks were swarming with officers. Detective Murphy, looking windblown and thoroughly annoyed, stepped off the launch, followed by a very disheveled Julian Vane and the courier in handcuffs. "All right, Drew," Murphy grunted, eyeing the empty wooden crate Nancy still held. "We've got the artist and the hired help, but where's the real Midnight on Manhattan?" Nancy pointed toward the gangplank where Arthur Sterling was being escorted down by two officers. "It's in the portfolio, detective, but you won't find just one painting." As Sterling reached the pier, Murphy snatched the leather case and unzipped it. To the crowd's shock, there weren't just two canvases inside, there were three. All were identical depictions of the New York skyline, glowing with cobalt and yellow. "What is this?" Murphy barked. "Which one is the real one?" Arthur Sterling slumped, his pride finally shattered. "It doesn't matter," he whispered. "Julian is a genius. Not even the experts can tell the difference anymore." "I believe I can," Miss Marple said calmly, stepping forward with her knitting needles tucked neatly away. She gestured for the detective to hold the light steady. "You see, Julian Vane is a man of the city. He understands the steel and the glass, but the original Midnight was painted during a summer storm, a night where the dampness in the air would have affected the way the oil dried on the canvas." She pointed to the second painting in the stack. "On this one, the yellow lights of the Chrysler building have a very slight natural bloom, a tiny blur where the moisture touched the pigment. The others are too perfect. They were painted in a dry, climate-controlled studio. They have the skill, but they lack the weather." Julian Vane let out a defeated sigh. "The old woman is right. The weathered one is the original. I kept it for myself. I couldn't bear to let the best one go." As the sun began to peek over the Atlantic horizon, painting the skyscrapers in shades of rose and gold, the mystery of the Manhattan masterpiece was finally closed. The following afternoon, Nancy, Bess, and Miss Marple sat in the window of a quiet tea room overlooking Central Park. The headlines of the New York Gazette shouted about the girl detective and the knitting sleuth who had broken the international art ring. "I must say, Nancy," Bess said, biting into a cucumber sandwich, "my nerves can't take much more of the Big Apple." "Oh, but the country can be quite dangerous too, dear," Miss Marple said with a twinkle in her eye. "Human nature is just as complicated in a garden as it is in a gallery. But I shall miss our adventures. It was a lovely trip, even if I never did get to see the top of the Empire State Building." Nancy smiled, looking at the two women. "Don't worry, Jane. There's a taxi waiting outside. We have just enough time for one last look at the skyline before your boat sails." As the blue roadster, now shipped to the city for their return journey, hummed through the streets of Manhattan, Nancy Drew knew that whether it was a saltbox sunroom in Maine or a penthouse in New York, as long as she had a sharp eye and good friends, there would always be another mystery waiting just around the corner. The end.